The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Blake Andresen from Cryptographic Economist, Christoph Atlas from Anonymous Bitcoin Book,
Hey, good to be here.
Megan Lords from Bitcoin Not Bombs and Crypto Convos,
Hey, thanks for having me.
and I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. First off, we've got great news. Gavin Andresen doesn't want to be the king of Bitcoin. Glad to hear it. Hear, hear. Bitcoin Billionare, the iPhone tapping game, is apparently getting rave reviews. And Bill Nye the Science Guy wants Bitcoin in his analog watch, whatever that means. And I just got back from Vegas and the Money 2020 convention, which looked pretty much like this. Or maybe a little bit like this. And I met some people like the blockchain CEO, the ChangeTip CEO, and even Julia Taransky and Brock Pierce. And I met this guy. That's right, Patrick Merck, Bitcoin lawyer and now the director of the Bitcoin Foundation. I met the woman from the background, too. Communications director of the Bitcoin Foundation, Jin Young England. Just a week of mad Bitcoins hobnobbing with the who's who in Bitcoin, surrounded by hundreds of rich CEOs from all the legacy payment systems about to be replaced by a series of ones and zeros. And then I went to the Pinball Hall of Fame, Rick's Restoration, and Pawn Stars. Yes, that's right, all three. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Issue 1, Silkroad Shutdown. The FBI is at it again, taking down online drug websites like it's going out of style. Operation Onimus, that's hard to say, and ominous. The shutdown has apparently gone global, shutting down more than 410 sites and seizing millions of dollars in Bitcoin. It may have even been a honeypot from the start. The Washington Post says that the FBI has made the world a more dangerous place by shutting down the Silk Road and other online drug markets. While the Wall Street Journal warns that Tor has anonymity has been pierced. Blake Andresen, your thoughts?
Well, I think that people that are saying that the world is now a more dangerous place are absolutely correct. I mean, we have a market where you can exchange for services that are illegal and dangerous in other places, and then we close it down and we act like it doesn't make drugs or dangerous services more valuable and more contentious. So it's really, really funny to me when they keep being like, we shut it down. It's like the Dread Pirate Roberts is something that cannot be shut down. It's like watch one movie and then you'll understand the name. It's really not that hard. It's not that complicated. I mean, look it up on Wikipedia. So I think it's funny when they lop off the head of the Hydra, 5 more grow, and then they lop those off. It's like, well, what do you think's going to happen? So those are my thoughts.
Christoph Atlas.
There's lots to talk about with this story. Weird coincidence, the day that this news came out, I was just thinking to myself, like, man, it's been like almost a year since the original Silk Road was shut down. I wonder what they're waiting for with the next series of shutdowns. And it occurred to me, like, they're probably going to do a bunch at once. They've probably been working on trying to do. That's like a typical law enforcement tactic that they have in their mind, that it's going to have more of an impact if you shut down a bunch of these things at once. Of course, if it's something that grows exponentially or continues to grow despite the shutdowns, it doesn't matter really. But yeah, so I think it's sad news, but if you look at, I don't know how much we can really trust the reports that the FBI submits with these arrests, but if you look at the report, they strongly indicate that this was a pretty massive operation security failure, that people were basically already made from the original Silk Road, weren't arrested intentionally at that time, got involved in the next Silk Road. The guy who is supposedly, allegedly the administrator, registering domains under his own name, just all kinds of stuff. So I think that, we actually may. So the people already started to talk about, like, well, what's the next generation of things? They're assuming that the Silk Road era is over, and I don't think it's over quite yet. I think that a really professional, well planned out team could coordinate this stuff and use proper operational security to run the next series of marketplaces in this image. I think it will still be around for a little while, but even if that's not the case, we do have these decentralized marketplaces that are marching towards their version 1.0, and they're going to be a lot tougher for people like the FBI to deal with when they're available.
We might see a Silkroad in a box software where just download and run your own drug market. And that's a good point, Christoph, that the FBI does all their hits at the same time, much like the Mafia. This is the end of The Godfather. Megan Lords.
I think the Washington Post was pretty spot on when they were saying that these crackdowns do make things more dangerous for people wanting to recreationally use drugs and buy other things that are illegal and the government says you can't have. At the same time, I think a lot of these sites are probably run by the government, ironically. I don't think they're probably the safest to use, and it's unfortunate that it's probably really difficult to tell which ones are legit and which ones aren't. Like Christoph said, there are some pretty, strange signs, the owner registering under his own name, things like that. They were just very, very strange. If you're wanting to run something very securely, you wouldn't be doing things like this. And I think a lot of them are traps for people. And it's unfortunate that instead of resorting to something that actually makes things safer for people and just like letting people buy the drugs, the government's just going in and tearing things up and just trying to trap people even more, as if the drug war isn't already destructive enough, just targeting people not online but just on the streets and things like that. So I do expect more to pop up, and I do expect them to become a lot more efficient and a lot more secure, though. I think there's a lot of really promising projects that are going to be coming out, and I think it's something that they can't stop ultimately. They can try to stop it, but already the cultural tide has shifted towards pro-legalization, at least in the case of cannabis. So I think you're seeing a lot more of a cultural shift and a societal shift in that direction in general, and I think that a lot of these crackdowns are going to be, seen in more of a negative light by your average person in the next few years. And so as they really start to realize how dangerous and awful the war on drugs has been.
It seems whether recreational or pharmaceutical, people want to take drugs or need to take drugs. Maybe the government should set up their own drug market to protect consumers. Exit question. Yes or no? Will there be another Dread Pirate Roberts? Blake Anderson.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's incontrovertible. It's the Dread Pirate Roberts, unless, the entire purpose for the name falls apart. Every single expectation should be that there will be. I mean, I can't believe that of all the people on Earth, not a single one of those persons would be like, I'm going to take up the DPR mantle. Why not? So I think
perhaps at one point the DPR will only be a symbol. Christoph, Atlas.
Yeah, there certainly will be. The first two alleged people to operate these websites under the DPR name, they're both from San Francisco, which leads me to strongly believe that there is some kind of dark market incubator going on there. And so it's just a matter of time before we see the next DPR.
And probably from San Francisco as well. Megan Lords.
Absolutely, and people think sometimes of Dread Pirate Roberts as this one person, but you have to separate Dread Pirate Roberts, what we know from the Silk Road, Dread Pirate Roberts trademark, from the meme and the idea and the concept, which is someone's going to pick up this mantle, and I think it's going to become a lot more symbolic too. I mean, the whole point of Dread Pirate Roberts comes from the movie The Princess Bride, and it was an idea that kind of spread throughout. So someone kept picking up the mantle. So of course, I think we're going to see this happen, and there's going to be a lot of Dread Pirate Robertses too. So.
The answer is yes. Moving on, issue 2. Feds begin their crackdown on Bitcoin stocks. Even Wired magazine is speculating now about the possible crackdown on Bitcoin 2.0, the emerging world of digital commodities such as crypto stocks, Counterparty, Ethereum, and even MaidSafe, citing only that one amateur college student investor got a letter. Wired admits that no other companies have received SEC letter. Christoph, Atlas, is the crackdown coming?
I'm sure that they'll do everything legally within their means to interrupt crypto stocks or things that would resemble crypto stocks. They may even do some things that are beyond legal means. And I don't think that people on Wall Street or any of the politicians in bed with those Wall Street folks are going to take too kindly to any kind of free market competition, and they'll do what they can to either outright ban such things or just make them as inconvenient to use as possible.
Megan Lords.
Yeah, there's going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of crackdowns. And the way these stories have been written about is really concerning to me because first you had I think it may have been a CoinDesk article, which I know what you all think about CoinDesk, and I think we're pretty much close to the same page, but they were saying, oh, there's been this huge SEC crackdown. I remember the first article said, oh, well, these people are saying that, no information can be disclosed to the press. They got these letters, but the letters say that they can't be disclosed. And then you had another article kind of following that saying, okay, maybe it wasn't that big of a deal. Maybe it was just one person. And then you have this Wired article kind of saying, not really providing a whole lot of evidence. And what's really clear to me is that these journalists are not doing their research whatsoever, and that's really concerning, and that should concern everyone who's trying to really pay attention to this subject. But I think ultimately, regardless of how it's reported and the way it's reported, there's going to be a lot of crackdowns, and they're going to make it very difficult for U.S. citizens to get access to these services. So either by making it impossible to start these kinds of businesses in the U.S., or if people do move outside of the country, preventing U.S. citizens from using these services. And that's really concerning, and that's it. But I think we have to be prepared for that. It's really unfortunate, but I think this is a situation where you have to expect the worst. And like Christoph said, they're going to use legal means and illegal means to probably do this.
Blake Anderson.
Well, by the time you go all the way through debt securities and equities and things like that, the big danger here is that you're going to have to defend complex economic subjects as they go into technology to a jury of your peers. And not to sound completely pompous, but do a lot of us that are core in this game really even have any peers that know all of this different stuff? So if something looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, and it's like, this looks like securities or a promise of future payments and stuff, are these people going to be able to argue, well, no, there's math and stuff, and it's not a negative equity situation and things like that? A jury of your peers is going to be like, the government said that you did something wrong, and it sounds really complicated. You're going to jail. So I think that is the really, really big concern, because you can technically make things that are not by definition securities, but the definition is so broad-reaching that it'll be really, really hard to defend in court. So I think that makes a lot of people really, really nervous, and I think that they, should tread carefully.
Especially when you have a company like crypto stocks. It seems pretty clear they're into crypto stocks. Now, counterparty, at least it's a party. Exit question. Which service is under more threat, counterparty or crypto stocks? This is the exact same question from last week because it's the exact same topic. Who cares? Moving on. Did you know Mad Bitcoins and Bitcoin Blake were sent to Las Vegas to cover the Money 2020 convention thanks to the support of Roberts and Roberts Brokerage? You should try it today. Buy gold and silver with Bitcoin at rrbi.co. Issue 3, Characteristics of Bitcoin Users, an analysis of Google search data. A new study from the University of Kentucky shows that Bitcoin users fall into 4 categories: computer programming enthusiasts, speculative investors, libertarians, and criminals. Megan Lords, what do you think of this study, and what category do you fall in?
I think this is an interesting study, and I think it confirms what a lot of people have been saying for a long time, and especially the way the media portrays Bitcoin supporters. As far as what category I fall into, I would say I definitely fall into the criminal category.
Blake Anderson.
Well, I was going to say exactly what Megan said. I'm a hardcore criminal, and I do criminal things. So me and my criminal buddies like the criminal aspects of Bitcoin. I'm a computer nerd at heart. I'd say I have to go into that category. Trying to go into finance and stuff as I've been pushed in that direction through my project management career makes sense. But if we could all not deal with, funny money and just have real Bitcoin money, I would go back into computer stuff because it's what I enjoy.
Christoph Atlas.
Is there really any difference between libertarians and criminals? Are they not already, guilty of thought crime? I think there's a strong case to be made for that. So clearly, I would fall under the computer nerd category, and I think that a lot of these criminals are probably like extremists that are dissatisfied with the wonderful dollar currency that was given to us by our masters, and they're shaking their shackles and rattling the bars, and it just really makes me nervous.
And I would be in a little bit of each group. But we've got no time. Moving on, issue 4. The World Crypto Network covered the Money 2020 convention this week with more than 750 CEOs and 1 mad Bitcoins. Ben Lawsky made a speech and promised to leave programmers and miners alone. Hooray for him and the great state of New York. Blake Anderson, what do you think of Ben Lawsky's promises?
Well, I think that Ben Lawsky's promises may or may not be accurate, because I've held, as a truth for a long time that Ben Lawsky's goal is to create an exchange with a token substrate that does not actually represent the Bitcoin token, so they can be leveraged. So he's like, oh, people that I don't really want to come and crush are afraid. Don't worry, I'm not going to come after you. And then people are like, maybe, yay. But at the same time, I think that if they are able to get another GOX situation with a fractional reserve token thing going that's connected with all the legacy financial systems, that's going to be really bad and will do even more damage than GOX. So was it good or neutral news? Yeah, maybe, but do not stop looking out for really, really malicious stuff to come out of New York. I don't think it's going to be good by the time the dust settles.
Christoph Atlas.
Yeah, to me, it's sad to see people that are having a positive reaction to this news. It's like the wife abuser that says, "Well, I only actually hit her 4 times and not 5," and everyone's like, "Oh, God, what a relief!" It's sad to see this. I think that these regulations are going to have a very negative effect on Bitcoin. I expect to see the state of New York continue to move the bar just whenever we feel that we're getting comfortable with the current set of regulations. I think that they're going to hold back innovation massively beyond what they have already inflicted through regulatory uncertainty. And I suspect that many regulators in other places will copy their bad behavior, and it's unfortunate.
Megan Lords.
Yeah, the worst thing about this is it sets a template for other states to follow, and I think it's going to be really, really bad, and I think it's something that we need to take very seriously. But I guess, it's unfortunate because in order to get, I guess, mainstream adoption, if you're looking for that, you're going to need to go through the exchanges, and the exchanges are the most easily attacked by these regulations, and they're going to be what's targeted. By any state and any regulations. And I think New York is going to come down very, very hard on them. And that's very bad news for people who are looking to get into Bitcoin and, start businesses of their own and try to provide services to people. So we're going to have to find alternatives, and hopefully we can survive it, but I do think it's going to be ongoing. We have to expect this in the same way that the internet got regulated and some of these other things that were really great got regulated. And it is kind of one of those things, the less they understand it, it could be better for us, but it's only a matter of time before I think the regulations get worse and worse.
It's bad for New York, and it's bad for Bitcoin. You still have a chance to submit your questions. Submit your questions now. We're running out of time for that. But here's a little bit of stalling. And finally tonight, the Bitcoin group has been immortalized in comic book form by Brazilian illustrator Rock from rockincomics.com.br. What's up? Indeed. Follow him on Twitter at rock, well, it's supposed to be there, but it's not there anymore, at Rock Barcelos, Barcellos. Yes, his real name is Rock. Maybe send him some change tip, too. Anyway, moving on. Your questions. We've got one question from Samutra. Samutra says, I like the way Lawsky was talking. It really looked like he's in delusion that he's helping, or he's a really good actor. And I could agree with that. I was there for the speech, and when Lawsky describes the Mt. Gox moment, for him it's like the JFK assassination. The whole world stopped. My goodness, a really crappy-looking PHP application in Japan has failed us. One programmer is not to be trusted. We need teams of competent programmers and oversight. This is such a surprise to me. And apparently to Lawsky it was a huge surprise. And the bigger surprise to him was that the Japanese regulators hadn't heard of Bitcoin and they weren't ready. And he was going to protect people. It's a very paternalist attitude. It almost seems like a parody of what the libertarians think of government. Government as a big father, Lawsky as a protector. And what was so funny is if you watch the question and answers as well, which you can watch on World Crypto Network, is that they ask about the credit card collapse and the collapse of the banking system and the mortgage system, and they say, why didn't you protect us from any of those things, Lawsky? Why didn't you protect us from all our credit cards being hacked? He doesn't realize that's his job too. And that's also a much larger slice of the pie than Bitcoin. He should really be minding his own house before he goes out and starts taking on more responsibilities. What did you guys think about the way Lawsky was talking? Blake?
I agree. I mean, like, his responsibility is to the currency that was made by the people that he represents and, like, works with their system and stuff. And I'm not saying he represents me, but arguably that's your stuff. You did not invent Bitcoin. You have nothing to do with it. Go the hell away. Like, get out of here. Like, do not touch this stuff. It's not yours. I was talking to Paul Snow after he spoke, and Paul Snow was like, yeah, he slipped up and said, this is the face of finance, or like, this is the face of economics, and pointed to his own face. And Paul Snow was like, I recoiled in horror for a second. And I didn't hear him say it, but Paul said that he definitely did. And Paul Snow's a pretty cool guy, so Factom is awesome, and a lot of the funny things about it, you know, Paul was right there to point out. He tweeted about it too. I was still on the plane, so I've only seen the recorded coverage, but his delusional quality that you know, the Sumitra pointed at is true. I mean, he's either delusional and really believes it, or just a bad actor. But
and from a consumer perspective, like consumer protection, no one's been put in jail for the mortgage crisis. They put all this bad fish in boxes and then they sold it as good fish. And of course, they were going to be found out. And the idea would be eventually they'd have to lose their money. They'd have to go to jail. They knew that. They knew that when they were sending out the bad fish, it would be caught. It would cause destruction, disaster in the economy. They're very smart. But they haven't been punished. It's very strange. Christoph, what do you think?
Go ahead.
Yeah, are these people delusional or are they good actors? It's probably a little bit of both. Certainly, if you look at other historical figures who were well known for atrocities, they seem to really believe ostensibly that they were doing something noble or for the greater good or whatever. This is something that they talk themselves into, and it's quite possible that Ben Lawsky is in that position. It didn't start with Bitcoin. I mean, this is a person that has a career of thinking that he can work the way up the ladder to positions where he dictates how people live their lives over a vast geographical area for millions and millions of people. I mean, it's a crazy idea. It's generally accepted in society right now. So I don't think that we should be particularly shocked when he brings this to bear on the Bitcoin space. It's pretty consistent with his history overall.
Megan?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate to think that some people are going to actually trust this incompetent person to protect them. I mean, he's utterly useless. But I mean, it's not surprising considering that Congress has 11% approval ratings and 96% or so of them got reelected. Really, I mean, this is the world we live in. So unfortunately, I think people are going to believe him, and I think he believes himself. I think that he really, really believes in what he's doing, and he's used to having that power. He's very comfortable where he's at. He's used to kind of being seen as an authority on these things, and the truth is, I mean, he's not very helpful to people who need the protection. He's already proven that, and that is interesting. What Paul Snow said, if he did actually say something like that, it's like, do you really want to say that? Do you want to be the face of that? Because it didn't really work out for a lot of people there. So yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I think he comes across as very phony, and while at the same time probably believing a lot of what he's saying. So people in power tend to really believe it sometimes. So I think it could be totally genuine, but I think this is another example of one of those people who is pretty much useless at what they do and still is seen as some kind of authority and say, gets appointed, or I guess in the case of congressman, would be reelected, and the cycle keeps going, I guess. So I'm sorry to be so pessimistic, but
I had wanted to be there because I wanted to ask him questions, and I wanted to ask him questions that weren't about Bitcoin, but were about J.P. Morgan Chase, the ITIL certification servers being hacked, about risk management. I mean, if you go to Google right now and Google risk management and go to Wikipedia and read that article, that is one hell of a long article with some really complex stuff. And if Ben Lawsky was going to help out, he should have a giant risk management information science team that helps these big banks manage risk, because as a former information technology project manager for math-based security and risk management, I know that the legacy financial institutions are not secure of risk, not even close. Ben Lawsky should be working like 20 hours a day trying to do that, and all he's doing is talking about Bitcoin. It's like, I would have loved to be there and been like, let's talk about risk management a little bit and about ISO, and he would have been able to answer that.
Not even going to produce the risk management documents until after he releases his regulations. One questions if he's even done them. And the question I would have asked is along the same lines. Why do you want to be first? Like, if you're a really prepared person, the first one at regulation always fails, unless you're completely full of hubris, which could be a possibility. You're not releasing documents. You're acting shady. You think that doubling a 45-day period to 90 days is a significant expansion when we're talking about new technology that you don't even understand. Why do you want to be first, Lawsky? Don't you think that first is going to fail? It's important. Like, why not have someone else fail first, like Bangladesh or Russia or any of these other forward-thinking leaders that are attempting to control technology they don't understand? Why not let them be first?
One of the things that's clear watching him speak is that he exists in quite a vacuum chamber with a lot of yes men around him. 1 minute of conversation with an honest, well-informed person, and he would completely collapse. I mean, I think it's very, very unlikely you're going to see him, debating with any kind of real libertarian or whatever. In the conversation, it would be a real, short conversation. You'd say, "Why are you doing this?" "Well, we have to have the guardrails in place to prevent terrorism, and I'm in the know. I've seen the terrible things that can happen in New York and 9/11, and you may not be aware of all of the bad stuff happening underground, but the terrorist financing is like, okay, so what is terrorism? How does that compare to what the U.S. is doing in Afghanistan and Iraq and other places?" And blank out. That's what Ayn Rand called the blank out. It's like, my mind doesn't need to go there, right? That's not my department. And even though it's an incredibly critical question that for me to answer to justify myself as an ethical actor and a human being, I'm not going to go there. And we're just not going to see that conversation take place, I would assume.
Horrible things are being done with drones overseas, and it's all by us. It's not the terrorists. It's the us.
And tenable arguments would not be good for his cognitive dissonance. He would not do well under it, which is why I was so anxious to be there and ask him about risk management, but I didn't get that chance.
It seemed very much like the convention started on Monday, but they had a day on Sunday that no one came to. So it was a very odd scheduling decision. Probably cost-based in Vegas, I imagine. We've got another question from Samutra. He says, "Did anyone show Lawsky Andreas's Canadian Senate video? Maybe he'll get out of his delusions." And I'd imagine, sadly, that he didn't watch it because it's from Canada. Even though New York is right next to Canada, still, Lawsky's an American. He can't be watching the Canadian Senate. We've got a couple other questions here. Samutra asks, "Will the FBI go after anonymous coins and drug-related coin developers yet? Next." It's tough to say. The main thing about the counterparty and other situations is that it really feels like they might be issuing securities, and crypto stocks clearly says stocks in the title. Those are clearly illegal. Perhaps these other tokens could be more novelty-based. It's tough to tell. I mean, the anonymous coins, they could go after them, but they've already published their code. Some of it's even been open source, right, Christoph? Some of the dark wallet code has been released.
Yeah, both Darkcoin, Dark Wallet, Crypto Note, all of this stuff is open source, and using it is not in and of itself illegal. We're actually just very starting to see initial stages of these being implemented in these dark marketplaces. We just saw two very small marketplaces that I guess haven't been shut down yet that adopted Darkcoin recently. So I wouldn't expect to see them go after those coins in particular. I would expect them more to go after the marketplaces.
That must be so embarrassing for the FBI to shut down so many illegal websites, and then for there to still be 2 or 3 more that they've forgotten about or they came up while they were taking the others out. That's so annoying. I mean, you're trying to wipe them all out, and the new ones just keep popping up. I don't know what they're going to do about that. That sounds like a real problem. We've got another comment from Brandon.
I was gonna comment on that last question if we have a moment. Do you think so?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I would say there's a gradient of where you should be worried. If you're making a proof of stake coin and you've pre-mined a whole bunch of it and you own it and the rest of it's going out and stuff like that, that's like almost issuing a security. I would be very, very careful if you're doing that. Would I be really careful like right now they can come after you tomorrow? No. But down the line, like if you made a proof of stake network and it went out there and it's working and more people are using it, you have the lion's share of it, or making an asset token, I mean, I wouldn't be too confident there. But that being said, again, I agree with Thomas. We're really worried about things that have like stock or security in them, or even like counterparty, which doesn't really say anything about securities. Their business is issuing cryptographic securities. So I would not put together a really huge multi-billion-dollar business plan and go raise money from people thinking that the government is going to leave this stuff alone, because securities fraud is one of the ways that they go after people and troll them to secure their iron grip on the market through the Dow and the NASDAQ. So they won't take kindly to that, but don't be too worried yet if you have a small market cap.
That is a good point. If you had a wholly proof-of-stake coin that didn't have any proof of work and you held the early coins, you would be able to mine incredibly efficiently, and it could be like a commodity or a equity.
And the interested parties are not just the Benjamin Lawskys of the world either. Patrick Byrne has brought up some significant evidence that like the Russian mafia is involved in the stock market at this point. So there's a lot of nasty people that would not want to see cryptographic competition with these marketplaces.
Very good. Moving on to the next question. Brandon Johnson says, Thomas, you forgot the air quotes for well-informed regulators. I just assumed you put them in. It's like an honest politician, right? We've also got from Silverminer, he says, did you see the Kaiser report talking about Nick Scabo being Satoshi? Any thoughts? I'm not sure if this is an interview with Scabo or if they were just talking about it generally. I would agree there's been linguistic analysis on the Satoshi papers, and the linguistic, it leads me to believe he was involved in the papers. I don't know that means he's Satoshi, but maybe he proof-edited them, he added parts to them, maybe even Satoshi copy and pasted his own work into there. Linguistic analysis is pretty strong, and obviously Scabo's a very smart guy in this field. A lot of these ideas that Satoshi used were his ideas, much like Richard Stallman and Linus Torvalds, the way that they work together, and that's just how open source works. Christoph.
Just to be devil's advocate there, one of the things that's come up in the Silkroad 2.0 stuff is like, if they screw the pooch on operational security, what are you supposed to do? Well, for the people that are actually doing real darknet operational security, one of the things we'll commonly do is one of their fallbacks will be to use the identity of someone else. So if I'm Satoshi, I'm using Nick Szabo's work, I absolutely would use some linguistic analysis to write the white paper in such a way that it appears to be him, to throw people off the scent. That's certainly a possibility. It's not science fiction-y. It would be pretty easily accomplished. So just keep that in mind.
That would be absolutely brilliant. But then again, we're talking about the guy who invented Bitcoin here, so it's not far-fetched at all. And let's see. Let's move on. What else we got here? Silverminer, pump and dump on the dark coin, piggybacking on the Silkroad news. Christoph disappears. Uh-oh. I don't know what's going on. Sounds like dark coin's going up. I haven't checked the markets in a few days. I've been away at the con. Have you guys seen any action on dark coin after the Silk Road going down?
Well, I think that one of the biggest use cases for dark coin would be various different exchange markets wherein you want to be have your identity be as obfuscated or as obscure as possible. So I can see that there would be a little bit of a dial back if people think that there's nowhere to acquisition gray market services with that coin. But I don't think that that's the case either. So hopefully it won't be too big of a pullback on that news. But if people are really shaken, it might be a pretty serious drawback.
Well, I guess the price has gone up in the last day or two. Following the news, I don't actually see immediately any evidence of a pump and dump, just people buying the rumor, so to speak.
Interesting side note, did the price of Bitcoin crash? I seem to recall when the first Silkroad went down, everyone freaked out because what do you use Bitcoin for if it's not drugs? But this time, wasn't even affected. I think we're actually up a little, right?
Yeah, well, the Silk Road wasn't using Darkcoin, so you would kind of maybe expect it to be positive news for Darkcoin. It didn't exist when the first Silk Road was around, so we don't have that to compare to.
Very good. Got
Bitcoin is right now at about 342, so I mean, if it,
so hardly any effect. Major black market destroyed. Bitcoin continues, which is really, when people say to you over and over again, Bitcoin is used for drugs, it has an illicit purpose, why didn't the price collapse when these dark markets were closed? Why does it seem to be expanding far beyond that every day? We've got another question for Blake, and he asks, Blake, is that why Satoshi's original Bitcoins have not moved? Would the government charge him with securities fraud if he took those early coins?
Well, no. I mean, actually, so you have proof of stake, which is, I'm going to be hyperbolic and call it communism, and then you have proof of work, which is labor theory. You have proof of work, which goes out, and then people worked to create different things, and then they were rewarded for that work, versus proof of stake, where you're staking coins. And the way that the proof of work system operates, that it went out there, it was autonomous. He happened to mine the Genesis block and get coins for himself. And just the way that Bitcoin works is it doesn't work like it works like an equity, but not a security, in my opinion. It's very, 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 very unique, which is what part of the difficulty is in explaining to people that are new that I compare it to something. You're like, well, anything that I compare it to is eventually going to betray meaning when you go all the way back to the etymology and the rhetoric and meaning. So I don't think that that's the reason that Satoshi doesn't sell his coins. I think that A, they're valuable, and B, he's probably got other accounts with coins in them as well.
I think a good comparison is the fair launch of Litecoin. Everyone got a chance to mine Litecoin from the beginning. Anyone could have gotten into it. Whereas with a proof of stake coin, if you have those early proof of stake miners, you can let them run for a couple days, and you're the only one on the network. You're getting all the blocks. You're getting all the coins. It's a questionable start. Christoph?
Yeah, I object to the use of I want to kill the term fair when it comes to distribution of coins. I think it's extremely relative. I agree with Stephanie Murphy, who recently remarked on LTB that basically fair is whenever you happen to get the coins, and it's unfair when you don't. Instead, we should focus on what's secure, and it's certainly true that proof of stake compared to proof of work, if there's a large stakeholder, that's a bit more risky than anything to do with proof of work.
I vehemently disagree. I think that Bitcoin is fair. I think that proof of work is fair, and I think that pre-mined and proof of stake is not fair. People have the distribution charts for proof of stake, and they try to get them to look similar to Bitcoin, but that is not, it doesn't matter how much you split stuff up and gave to different people to mimic the actual market forces of mining and stuff. I think that market theory is fair. Just so we can have our disagreement, which will be fun.
All right, we've got a follow-up from Silver Miner. He says there was a rally early on today in Dark, and then Twitter lit up with the usual buy Dark coin, and the price pulled back. So remember, there's always a dump after there's a pump. So everyone needs to watch for that madness. And finally, Sumitra writes, can we have a shout-out to DJ Booth for his awesome videos? Everyone should check out The Flip Side on the World Crypto Network, where the DJ Booth is doing a weekly roundup of Bitcoin news with jokes. That's right, Bitcoin news and jokes. We're moving on to predictions or story of the week. Blake, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
Yeah, my story of the week is that we went to Vegas to Money 2020. We were sent there by Roberts & Roberts, gold and precious metals. It's like the best company ever. If you ever need any gold or precious metals, you have to go to Roberts & Roberts. Don't go anywhere else. And it was a blast. Parts of the Money 2020 convention were a little bit, not as cuddly and cozy as some of the Bitcoin tech conferences, but it was a good time. Vegas is crazy. I'd never been there before, and it was fun, but I was definitely ready to leave by the time we left. It is a unique situation wherein, there's gambling here in the desert. Let's take all these resources and build a giant Tower of Babel in the desert, and to me it just looked like a giant flaming Tower of Babel the whole time, so that was kind of fun.
4 or 5 days in Vegas is a long time. Christoph, Atlas.
Yeah, I was just on. I was on this panel last night in decentral Vancouver, and one of the things we were sort of tossing around was like, what is 2015 going to look like? 2014 was supposed to be the year of multi-sig. It was supposed to be the year of making Bitcoin services really accessible and easier, and there was definitely some multi-sig and some improvement of interfaces and all that stuff. So I think that was somewhat true of 2014. What is 2015 going to be like? And I'm sure we'll talk about this more as we get closer to the end of the year, but just to get the ball rolling, I think that 2015 is potentially going to be a real turning point for Bitcoin, right? What I saw in 2014 a lot of was a kind of decline in passion, an attenuation of focus for the people in Bitcoin that are doing it for revolutionary reasons. Part of that had to do with the price. There was all kinds of stuff that factored in, and what we saw a lot more activity within was like this Silicon Valley, venture capitalist funded kind of stuff that is more focused on not making a lot of Bitcoins but making a lot of dollars, and that's quite a different meaning to lend to Bitcoin. And so I'm really curious what 2015 is going to look like in that regard. Are we going to see this resurgence of the spirit of Satoshi with the release of Ethereum and Open Bazaar and all these cool things that have been sort of on the back burner for a little while? Or are we going to see more of this new trend, which is like we're just going to keep pumping this Bitcoin bandwagon to make a few $1 million for specific people that already hold a lot of dollars, and is that going to be the full meaning of Bitcoin? That would be a sad ending in many ways to Bitcoin, and I'll certainly be doing what I can to push in the decentralized version of Bitcoin.
Megan, Lords.
So I wanted to let everyone who may be attending Libertopia Festival next weekend that I'll be speaking there. My talk will be titled "Everyone Hates Activists and How Bitcoin Could Change That." So if you're in the San Diego area, come check it out. It should be pretty fun. And I also have a prediction. I discovered something today, or not today, it was probably a few days ago, that I think will be something that causes Bitcoin to go mainstream. And that thing is called shitexpress.com. And shitexpress.com allows you to send poo to people in decorative tins with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And I think like vengeance is a really strong market that you could appeal to, and especially as the 2016 elections start coming up, people start getting real angry again. We just saw this with the midterm elections. I think things like that are really going to push Bitcoin adoption a lot further. So
A wonderful business idea. Shit in a jar.
I hope they can get a bulk discount for all of the stuff that's going to be sent to the White House.
Yes.
I'm
It's
worried
a
about-
reasonable price right now. It's like $16.50 or something to like send, and it's a very nice looking tins. You can pick your animal too.
I'm just
I-
worried about Super Nintendo Lawsky. His office is going to smell really bad.
Don't send any to him. Don't send any to him.
I use my own personal operation. It's cheaper than shit.
And you can light it on fire first. Anyway, prediction.
I bet they're probably going to add that, the lighting it on fire.
Light it on fire. En flambe. Maybe a singing telegram. There's a lot of options. It's a good business.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, prediction. We're witnessing the changing of the guard. We are surrounded by dinosaurs who are only now beginning to struggle in the tar pits. Sites are shut down, but new sites open. The idea of Bitcoin as a payment and a transfer protocol continues to spread like wildfire. Like wildfire. Oh, we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.